28 days. That is how long my wife, Jessica, decided I did not exist. Let me back up, because the way it ended will make more sense if I tell you how it started. It was a Tuesday evening when everything shifted. I came home from work and the place was dead quiet. Not the relaxing kind of quiet. The heavy kind, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole house on purpose. Jessica sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone like I was invisible. "How was your day?" I asked as I set my keys on the counter. "Nothing. Not even a glance." "Is everything okay?" I tried again. Still nothing. She stood up, walked past me like I was a coat rack, and headed upstairs. The bedroom door closed harder than it needed to. Here is the thing about Jessica. She has always had a flair for drama, but this felt different. The night before, we had what I thought was a normal talk about splitting chores. She had been upset about doing laundry while I was at work, even though I take care of the yard work, the car maintenance, and most of the bills. I said maybe we should split things more fairly across the board. She did not like that. I did not expect what came next. For the next 3 days, she kept up a strange routine. She made herself breakfast and left my plate and mug in the sink. She washed only her clothes and left mine sitting in the hamper. She ordered takeout for one and ate it at the table, right in front of me, without offering a bite. The part that got me most was how she talked to everyone else. Her phone would ring and she would light up, smiles, small talk, laughing with her friends or her family. The second she hung up, I was a ghost again. By day 4, it clicked for me. This was not about the chore talk. This was a power move. The silent treatment as a weapon. The goal was to make me crack, beg for forgiveness, grovel for attention. I had seen her run this play before with her sister, Emily, at a family get-together. Emily spent an entire evening chasing Jessica around, apologizing for some small comment, while Jessica acted like she was not there. But I am not her sister. On day 5, something interesting happened. I was watching the game in the living room when Jessica came downstairs. She stood there for a full minute, waiting for me to notice her, waiting for me to try to talk, waiting for proof that her silence had me on a leash. I kept my eyes on the television. She cleared her throat, loud. I kept watching. She stomped back upstairs and called someone. Sounded like her friend Megan, and her voice carried through the thin walls. "He is being so stubborn. Can you believe he is not even trying to fix this?" That is when it hit me. She was not ignoring me because she was hurt. She was ignoring me to train me. Classic conditioning. Give the husband the cold shoulder until he learns to submit to whatever she wants. The plan had a problem. I was noticing how peaceful the house felt. No constant critique about how I loaded the dishwasher. No complaints about my choice of television shows. No lectures about a coffee cup sitting on the counter for 5 minutes. For the first time in years, I could walk in after work and actually relax. By the end of week 1, I made a decision. If she wanted to play games, I would play along, but not the way she expected. There were things I loved that I had let go of because of her nonstop complaints. Parts of myself I boxed up so I would not set off another mood. Music, for example. I used to be a real musician, not just a hobby guy. I played saxophone in a jazz band for 5 years before we got married. I had a keyboard and a small setup in my home studio before it turned into her craft room. She never actually used it for crafts, but she called it her craft room anyway. Over time, every time I tried to practice, I got the comments. "That noise is giving me a headache. Do you have to play the same piece over and over again? And the one that cut the most. Are you sure you used to be a musician? Because that does not sound right." Those lines stuck with me because music was not just something I did. It was part of who I was. Bit by bit, I played less, until my saxophone case ended up buried in the closet under boxes of her seasonal decorations. Well, if she was going to ignore me completely, that meant there would be no complaints about sound, right? On day 8, I pulled the saxophone case out of the closet. Dust came off in a little cloud. When I snapped it open, I felt something I had not felt in years. Plain, clean excitement. I set up in the living room, in the exact spot she would pass to get to the kitchen. Then I started playing. I will be honest. I was rusty. Very rusty. The first few notes were rough, and my embouchure was out of shape. Under normal circumstances, it would have been the perfect chance for her to throw a sharp comment at my playing. But she could not. Not unless she wanted to break her own rule. I heard her footsteps pause at the top of the stairs. I kept working through simple scales for about half a minute. Then her bedroom door slammed so hard the walls shook. I smiled and kept playing. The next day, I rolled the keyboard out and added it to my routine. I set it up in the dining room because the room carries sound in a nice, clean way. I spent an hour with old jazz standards, letting my hands remember chords my body used to play without thinking. She came down while I was in the middle of take 5. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She stood there, wanting to speak, her face turning red. I clipped a note in the bridge. Her mouth opened, ready for the usual jab, but she remembered her silent act and clamped it shut. She grabbed her purse and charged out. The front door cracked like a starter's pistol. I finished the tune and realized I felt more like myself than I had in years. By day 10, I had a rhythm I never could have managed 2 weeks earlier. Morning coffee and keyboard scales. Evening wind down with the saxophone. The house was filled with music for the first time in forever. And Jessica was unraveling. The cold shoulder was supposed to make me chase her. Instead, I was busy finding the parts of me I had packed away. Each morning, I moved the keyboard to the living room and walked through progressions. Muscle memory woke up fast. My fingers kept falling into familiar changes, and before long I was playing arrangements I had not touched in a decade. She would come down for coffee, see me at the keys, and her jaw would set. She could not say a word without admitting her little strategy was falling apart. The breakthrough came on day 12. I was drilling a hard saxophone piece with tight runs that needed clean precision. I looped the same 16 bars for maybe 20 minutes, inching up the tempo. When I missed a passage, I stopped, reset, and tried again. She was in the kitchen. I could feel the tension rolling off her. Every time I flubbed a note, something in there landed a little too hard. A mug, a plate, the refrigerator door. Then I botched a chromatic line completely. It squealed and squawked in a way that would make any jazz player wince. She snapped. Jesus Christ. Are you sure you used to be a musician? That sounds like an animal dying. The words hung there for 3 heartbeats. Then her eyes went wide. She slapped a hand over her mouth, like she could reel the sentence back in. I lowered the horn. Oh, so you can hear me. Interesting. Her face went scarlet. She spun, marched upstairs, and slammed the door. A second later, I heard her on the phone, talking fast. I could not make out the words, but the tone was clear, furious at herself for breaking formation. Here is what hit me hardest. After weeks of silence, the first thing out of her mouth was meant to cut me down and make me small about something I love. That told me all I needed to know about where this marriage was headed. I lifted the saxophone and ran that passage again. Clean. Perfect. The next few days were like watching a storm try to hold together. She fought her own rules and kept losing. The silent treatment was supposed to keep me under her thumb. Instead, I was thriving without the constant commentary. I widened the circle beyond music. I had a woodworking bench in the garage I set up 3 years back. She had called it messy, noisy, a waste of time and money. With no complaints coming my way, I pulled the cover off the table saw for the first time in months. The hum rolled through the house. The bedroom door upstairs slammed again. I kept cutting. I built a small bookshelf I had sketched years ago. The feel of making something with my hands, and doing it without a running critique, was addictive. I also took back the television. For years, I would come home to reality shows or romantic comedies and wait my turn. Now I walked in, grabbed the remote, and put on what I wanted. If it was a basketball game, it was a basketball game. She would storm in, see the screen, and storm right back out. Day 16 is when the truth showed itself. I was in the middle of an evening session, working through some Miles Davis arrangements on my saxophone. The notes were landing right, and I had that smooth, locked-in feeling I had missed for years. Jessica came down the stairs, probably heading for the kitchen, and stopped when she saw me playing. For a heartbeat, I caught something new on her face. It was not anger. It was not frustration. It looked like recognition. Like she remembered the man she married, the musician. Not the watered-down version who had packed away his passions to keep the peace. Then it slipped. Her face went hard again. She turned, went back upstairs, and the next thing I heard was her voice on the phone. This time I could make out some of it. He is doing this to spite me. Playing that stupid instrument every single day. He knows how much I hate it. There it was, clean as day. She did not hate the music because it was loud or bothersome. She hated it because she could not control it. It was mine. It brought me joy that did not revolve around her mood. That night, after she went to bed, I sat with the horn across my lap and felt something deep settle in. I had spent years trying to be the husband she wanted, so much that I had lost track of who I was. The silent treatment was not punishment. It was freedom. For the first time in our marriage, I was moving like myself in my own house, choosing what I wanted to do and doing it. And the best part was, she could not say a word about it without admitting her game was failing. I lifted the saxophone and played a slow, warm ballad. The sound filled the rooms she had kept quiet for so long. I went to sleep completely at ease. By day 18, it was not just about music. I was taking back every corner of my life I had surrendered over the years, and she had to watch it in silence, boxed in by her own rules. The living room went first. For years, she had set the furniture to favor her television setup, angled to the wall where she could watch her shows and fuss with crafts she never finished. The couch sat at a weird slant, so that watching sports meant a kink in your neck. Not anymore. I spent Saturday morning shifting everything. The couch faced the television head-on. The coffee table sat at the right height for my feet. My saxophone stand moved beside my favorite chair. She came downstairs, took in the new layout, and just stood there. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She wanted to complain. I could see it build in her throat. But the moment she spoke, the silent treatment would be over. So she grabbed her purse and left for 3 hours. When she came back, I was in my chair, feet on the coffee table, something she had always called trashy and disrespectful to the furniture, watching the game. She waited in the doorway like I should feel guilty for taking up space in my own home. I did not even look away from the television. Next came the kitchen. She had always demanded empty counters, except for those fancy canisters that did nothing. My coffee maker lived in the pantry because it ruined the look. My vitamins and supplements hid in a cabinet because they were clutter. That ended. I set up a proper coffee station on the counter. Coffee maker, grinder, a few bags of beans, all right at hand for morning. The supplements got their own spot. I even brought out the blender for protein shakes, the one she had banned for being too bulky. Every morning, I made coffee in plain sight, and she had to walk around my setup to get to her precious, spotless sink. Her face said everything. But what could she do? Tell me I could not use my own kitchen? The real shift came at dinner. For years, the menu was whatever she felt like cooking. Usually a pretty recipe from the internet that looked nice and tasted like cardboard. I would suggest something else, and she always had a reason mine was wrong. Too spicy, too unhealthy, too complicated, too plain. Now I came home and made what I wanted. Spicy Mexican food that sent cumin and chili powder through the house. Indian curries she had called too exotic. Real comfort food like burgers and fries, things she had banned as beneath us. She would smell dinner and hover near the doorway, wanting a taste. But she was pretending I did not exist, and that meant she could not ask for a plate. So I ate at the table I paid for. In the home I kept running, and I enjoyed every bite. She would fix herself a small, sad salad and chew through it while the smell of my dinner filled every room. The garage turned into my sanctuary. I set up the woodworking station and started spending evenings out there, finally building the things I had planned for years. A real workbench, sturdy storage shelves, and a guitar stand I had been meaning to make since before we got married. The sound of the power tools rolled through the house each night. I could see Jessica's silhouette in the kitchen window, watching me measure, cut, and sand. Sometimes she paced back and forth, rattled by the noise and the activity. But she could not complain without breaking her own rule. One evening, I was working on a small jewelry box, just something to keep my hands busy, when she appeared in the doorway. She stood there for several minutes, watching me mark lines, square edges, and send a board through the saw. I could tell she wanted to speak, maybe even ask what I was making. Then she turned around and walked away without a word. The next morning, there was a note on the kitchen counter. The noise from the garage is disturbing the neighbors. I read it, smiled, and dropped it in the trash. Then I went out and spent an extra hour on my projects, making sure to use the loudest tools I owned. By day 22, the house felt different. It felt like it belonged to me again. The music, the furniture arranged for comfort instead of control, the freedom to eat what I actually wanted, the room to chase my hobbies without a running critique. All of it added up to something I had not felt in years, real peace in my own home. I woke up without that knot of worry about her mood. I did not wonder what small thing I would get wrong next. I looked forward to my coffee, my music practice, and whatever project I felt like tackling. The silent treatment that was supposed to hurt me had turned into the best gift she ever gave me. I was living like a bachelor inside my own house, only without the loneliness, because I finally had something I had been missing for years, myself. And every day that passed, each small freedom I took back, every honest moment of contentment, made one thing clearer: what my next move needed to be. She thought she was training me to submit. What she was really doing was showing me exactly what life could look like without her constant interference. The difference was too sharp to ignore. Day 25 changed everything. I was putting the finishing touches on a cedar jewelry box when I heard her on the phone again. This time the tone was different. It has been almost a month, and he is acting like he does not even care. He is actually happier. Can you believe that? I am giving him the silent treatment, and he is walking around like he won the lottery. She paused, listening. No, you do not understand. He is playing music all day, moving furniture, cooking whatever he wants. It is like he is pretending I do not even live here. Another pause. Then her voice got sharper. Of course it is bothering me. This was supposed to make him realize how much he needs me. Instead, he is acting like he is better off without me. That was the tell. This was not about chores or respect or any of the surface stuff we argued about. This was about control. She had been using emotional manipulation to keep me in line. When I finally pushed back on something small, she reached for the biggest lever she had: silence. The message was simple: see what happens when you do not do exactly what I want. Only it backfired. It did not break me down. It built me up. It did not make me beg for approval. It reminded me how to live without needing it. I set down the sandpaper and walked inside. She was still in the kitchen, pacing with nervous energy. I do not know what to do. Tomorrow makes it 4 weeks, and I was planning to end it then. But if I break first, does that mean he wins? She saw me in the doorway and dropped her voice. I have to go. He is here. She hung up and looked at me like I was finally ready to grovel. I took a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water, and headed back to the garage. Her face fell. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the living room with my saxophone across my lap and made a choice. If she wanted to play games, I would give her a game she would not forget. I had to set the stage first. The next morning, I took a personal day from work. After Jessica left for her job, I drove across town to a law office I had found online. The attorney was a sharp woman in her 50s named Karen Miller, a specialist in divorce cases. How can I help you? She asked once we sat down in her office. I need to understand my options, I said. My wife has given me the silent treatment for almost a month, and it has forced me to see some things about our marriage that I cannot ignore. Karen listened while I laid it all out. Not only the last few weeks, but the slow wearing down of my identity over the years, the steady criticisms, the way I had stopped doing what I loved just to avoid fights. How I had felt like a guest in my own home. It sounds like you already know what you want to do, she said when I finished. I think I do, I said, but I want to do it right. Clean, fair, and final. We spent 2 hours going through everything. Assets, debts, the house, our separate careers. With no children and mostly separate finances, it would be straightforward. Karen prepared the initial paperwork while I waited. When do you want to serve these? She asked, sliding the documents across the desk. Tomorrow morning. Day 29, I said. I want it to be memorable. On the drive home, I stopped at a florist. I needed something very specific. Flowers that looked beautiful but carried the right message. The clerk, a friendly woman named Amanda, suggested white roses. They represent new beginnings, she said. Perfect, I told her. That evening, I practiced longer than usual. I played a set of my favorite pieces on the saxophone and let the sound fill the house one more time. Jessica stayed upstairs, probably planning her big return to speaking tomorrow, certain she had won her little psychological war. If only she knew. I wrote 2 notes before bed. The first one took several drafts. It had to be clever enough to catch her off guard, but not so obvious that she would see the rest coming. The second note was simple, direct, and final. When I sealed the divorce papers in an envelope, I felt something I had not felt in years: complete certainty. Not anxiety. Not doubt. Not the second-guessing that had frozen me for so long. Just a steady, clear sense that I was doing the right thing. The silent treatment was supposed to teach me what happens when I do not submit to her will. Instead, it taught me something better: what my life looks like when I stop managing her moods and start honoring my own needs. Tomorrow, she would learn that her month-long experiment had backfired in a spectacular way. She had not trained a more obedient husband. She had created a man ready to walk away. I went to bed early and set my alarm for dawn. Day 29 was going to be unforgettable. Day 29 started like any other morning, except I woke with the kind of clarity you only get when the path is obvious. I began my day the way I had for 3 weeks, with music. I set the saxophone in the living room and played a slow, deliberate jazz standard. The notes moved through the rooms, and I heard her stir upstairs. I imagined her lying in bed, planning her grand return to speaking, picturing how grateful I would be when she lifted the punishment. She had no idea. After I finished, I arranged the white roses in a simple vase and placed them on the kitchen table with the first note folded beside them. The handwriting was neat and deliberate. The message was crafted to catch her completely off guard. Then I went back to my routine: coffee, the morning paper, a second round of easy practice, like it was just another peaceful day in the house I had reclaimed. Around 8:30, she came downstairs dressed for work, moving slowly, rehearsing in her head whatever performance she had planned. Maybe she would claim it was all a test, and I had passed. Maybe she would pretend it was a misunderstanding. She stepped into the kitchen and stopped dead when she saw the flowers. From the living room, I watched her walk to the table and pick up the note with slightly shaking fingers. I had written it out as clearly as I could. "Thank you for the best month of our marriage." Her face ran through 5 expressions in 10 seconds. Confusion first, then a smile, as she chose to misunderstand the point. Then confusion again as she read it a second time. He took my line the wrong way and grinned, bigger this time, like she thought I was finally admitting her silent treatment had worked. She actually looked proud of herself. "You think this is funny?" she said, breaking her silence with that righteous, scolding tone. "After everything you have put me through these past weeks." I kept playing the saxophone and did not look her way. "I am talking to you," she pushed louder now. "Do not you dare ignore me." I finished the tune, set the horn down, and looked at her calm as could be. "Oh, so you can talk now? I thought you forgot how." Color rushed into her face. "This is not a joke. Do you have any idea what you have done to our marriage?" "Actually, I do." I stood and walked into the kitchen. She was still holding my note. "I have had 28 days to think about what our marriage has turned into," I said. "And you are right. It is not funny at all." Confusion crossed her face like she was checking whether this matched the script she had planned. "That note," I said, pointing to the paper, "is not sarcasm. I meant it. These last 28 days have been the best our marriage has ever felt." "What are you talking about?" "Think about it," I said. "No fighting. No constant criticism. No walking on eggshells. No explaining why I want to make music in my own house. For the first time in years, I have been able to exist without managing your emotions every single second." She opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "Here is the real reason those days were so good. It is not just that we were not speaking. It is that I finally lived like myself again. And that made something very clear." I stepped to the counter where I had left a second envelope beside the coffee maker she always hated seeing on the counter. "If 28 days without your input made our marriage better, imagine what a lifetime could do." I handed her the envelope. Her hands shook as she took it, and I watched the moment she realized this scene was not going where she expected. The envelope was thick, official. Her name was written on the front in the same careful handwriting as the first note. "What is this?" she whispered. "Open it." She tore it open. Her eyes ran over the first page, then the second, then back to the first, like the words might change if she checked again. "You cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious about anything." She found the second note clipped to the back of the papers. It was short, plain, and final. "Now, let us make it the best year of my life." The silence that followed was not the staged quiet I had lived with all month. It was the shock of a dropped curtain. She looked from the papers, to me, to the flowers, and back to the papers again, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly had a different picture. "This is insane," she said. "Over one argument. Over me not talking to you for a few weeks?" "This is not about one argument," I said. "It is about what those 28 days taught me. You wanted to show me what life would be like without your attention. Mission accomplished. I liked it more than I ever thought I would." She slammed the stack on the table. "You cannot just end our marriage because I gave you the silent treatment." "I am not ending it because of the silent treatment," I said. "I am ending it because the silent treatment was the first time in years I felt free in my own home. That tells me everything I need to know about what we have become." I picked up my saxophone case and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To work." "Same as always," I said. "The difference is, When I come home tonight, I will not wonder what mood you are in or what new rules you invented while I was gone. I will come home and live my life." I paused in the doorway and looked back. "By the way, your silent treatment ends today. You can talk all you want now, just not to me." The divorce was finalized exactly 90 days later, 3 months that felt like the best stretch of my adult life. She tried every angle in those last weeks. Tears, bargaining, anger, promises to change. She even offered to let me practice music whenever I wanted, like access to my own passion had been the real problem. But those 28 days of quiet had taught me something I could not unlearn. I learned what peace feels like. I learned how it feels to wake up without a knot in my stomach. I learned what it means to live like myself in my own space. The day I signed the final papers, I came home to a house that was fully mine. No more walking on eggshells. No more managing somebody else's moods. No more shaving off pieces of who I am to keep a fake kind of peace. That evening, I set up both the keyboard and the saxophone in the living room. I played for 3 straight hours. Miles Davis, a couple of standards, even some original ideas I had been sketching in a notebook. The music reached every corner of the house, and for the first time in years, nobody told me it was too loud, too repetitive, or too amateur. 6 months later, I joined a local jazz ensemble. We play little rooms around the city, clubs, restaurants, a neighborhood festival now and then. I remembered exactly why music sat at the center of my life. When I told the other players that I had stopped for years, they stared. "How do you just stop making music?" one of them asked. I did not have a good answer for that. I only knew I would never make that mistake again. My house is what a home should be now. The furniture is arranged for comfort, not control. I have a proper music room where I can practice without judgment. The garage is a real workshop where I build things that serve a purpose. The kitchen is set up for meals I actually enjoy eating. Sometimes people ask if I miss being married. The honest answer is no. I do not miss that marriage. I do not miss the steady stream of criticism dressed up as concern. I do not miss the emotional games packaged as communication. I do not miss feeling like a guest in my own home. What I have now is better. I have a life built around my values, my interests, and my choices. I have friendships that do not have to pass anyone else's approval. I have hobbies that give me real joy instead of stress about whether they are acceptable. The silent treatment that was meant to punish me turned out to be the best gift she ever gave. It showed me what freedom feels like. It reminded me who I am under all the compromises and accommodations. And when she finally broke that silence on day 29, expecting a man who would fold and submit, she found something else. She found a man who remembered his worth, reclaimed his space, and decided he deserved better. The last thing I said to her during the proceedings was simple. "You wanted to teach me what life is like without your attention. Thank you for the lesson. It was exactly what I needed." These days, I fall asleep to silence. Not the manipulative kind. The peaceful kind. The kind that tells you you are exactly where you are supposed to be.